is Melissa Thill, and I am a historian. I graduated from Texas Women's University with a master's in history with an emphasis in public history. And I started a project this June to get a Texas historical marker for the lynching of George Hughes in the Sherman Riot of 1930. What really made me want to get this marker done was the murder of George Floyd. When that happened in May and I saw that video, it really touched me and struck my heart. And I thought, what is something that I could do for the community? What is a skill that I have that I could use to help bring justice and, talk about racism and things that really need to be talked about. And I knew this Texas historical marker was missing from the courthouse, and it wasn't missing because of oversight or because it was overlooked. It was missing from the record, the historical record, intentionally, because people just didn't want to talk about it and it was too uncomfortable. And I thought, it's been 91 years, now's the time to talk about it. And with the movement of with George Floyd being murdered, maybe we would have some momentum to finally get this marker placed at the courthouse.
So to get a Texas historical marker, there's a few things that have to be done. The very first step, which I started in June of 2020, is to contact your local historical commission, so the Grayson County Historical Commission. So that was my first step. So I contacted them. I wrote a research paper that has to be done. It's about 10 pages just of explaining the overall historical narrative of what happened on May 9th of 1930. So once that is done and the Grayson County Historical Commission approved that, our next step is to go to the Commissioner's Court. So this historical marker is a little bit different than your average historical marker because it is going to be placed at the Grayson County Courthouse, which means we have to have an extra approval. The Commissioner's Court has to approve that this historical marker can be placed at the courthouse. After we get their approval, it goes on for the final approval to the Texas Historical Commission. And what they would say is this does meet the requirements for a Texas historical marker, and they would work with the Grayson County Historical Commission for the wording that goes on the marker.
I worked with a man named Brian Hander. He was the chair of the historical markers, and he was absolutely great. We worked together from June until October or November working on my research paper, and he worked with me. He went over it. He actually approved the research, and he sent an email out to Judge Bill Majors and the commissioner saying that the research had been done, that it had been approved by the Grayson County Historical Commission, and it was ready to go to the Commissioner's Court. Well, as soon as that email was sent, Judge Majors made a phone call to Teddy Salmon, who is the president of the Historical Commission. And once he made that phone call, it stopped everything in its tracks. He actually called me and said they had a problem with it, that Teddy Salmon had a problem with it, and a couple of days later, Brian Hander resigned over it. So as soon as the Grayson County Historical Commission said, yes, this can go to the Commissioner's Court, it was stopped dead in its tracks. They stopped it in December. So the approval that I had was pulled back. So this marker that was approved was no longer approved. So the next step I had to do was go back to the Grayson County Historical Commission and try to figure out how to get this thing approved and get it through the Historical Commission. This turned out to be a much bigger deal than I thought it was going to be. Teddy Salmon, the president of the Historical Commission, really put up some roadblocks for this. She at first just ignored my emails, and then when we did meet at the beginning of February, she said that she would not approve this historical marker because I used the word lynching. She said that his body was desecrated and that he was not lynched, which we know is not true. George Hughes was lynched.
So a lynching, which you could look up, it's common knowledge, is not just a hanging. People get that confused. They think a lynching is a hanging. Lynching is just death by a mob of 3 or more in the name of what they believe is justice. And for a president of a historical commission to not know what a lynching is, I think draws for some concern. That she would say, we have to say desecration of a body. She also says she didn't want the Texas historical marker to be placed at the courthouse. But this needs to be placed at the courthouse because during the Sherman Riot of 1930, George Hughes died at the courthouse, but the mob also burned the courthouse to the ground. People in the crowd were yelling out things like, "Burn it to the ground, the taxpayers will pay for it." So this historical marker needs to be placed at the courthouse where this occurred, and placing it somewhere else is just another way that we would whitewash history and try to make this seem like it wasn't as bad as it was.
So after I met with Teddy Salmon, and she told me that this historical marker would not be approved. She told me this in February. That is when I went public with this story. I went to the local news channels. I made a Facebook page, the Sherman Riot of 1930, a historical marker for the Sherman Riot of 1930. And that is when I went public with this information, because I knew at that point that the Grayson County Historical Commission, or Teddy Salmon, was not going to support this historical marker. We did have a public meeting. It was confusing. Ms. Salmon said we were not there to approve the marker, but just to meet a requirement for a public forum. And that's what we did. The public came forward. Everybody that was there spoke for the marker. Since that meeting, Ms. Salmon has stepped down. She is now the vice president of the Historical Commission, and Dusty Williams is the president of the Historical Commission. And at this point, we are getting some great feedback from the Grayson County Historical Commission. Dusty has been working with me ever since mid-February, end of February, and he's done a really great job of helping me promote this historical marker and make sure all the historical information is correct. The position of Grayson County historically has been to hide what happened. So when Teddy Salmon and Judge Bill Majors are wanting this to go away, that is how it has been handled for 91 years. But the time is now to talk about this, to talk about it, to recognize it, and to teach the next generation about what happened. Hiding it has done nothing. And I think there's evidence that you cannot hide this by the fact that today there's support for a Texas historical marker. People want to know their history, and hiding it does not work. It will keep coming back again and again.